All right, welcome and good day. My name is Oliver Blue, and it is time again for another workbook lesson from A Course in Miracle. And today we are still in our third review session, and we're going to be looking at previous workbook lessons 103 and 10. Let me change that. We're going to be looking at previous workbook lessons 105 and 106. And today's lesson is 118. And remember that we are reviewing these ideas in the morning and in the evening. And then during the day, we bring to light, we bring to remembrance these ideas as we go through our day. I am delighted to be with you and to be your temporary guide as we take another step in this review process. Another step towards the renewing and the transforming of our minds. And it is such a journey to be on because life becomes focused, life becomes purposeful. There is an awareness, there is a consciousness towards there's a consciousness towards aligning our lives, bringing our life into this state of being in which we were created, fulfilling our purpose, fulfilling our role. One moment, please. Okay, thank you. And so life becomes so much more precious, so much more meaningful, so much more useful. And I am so glad that you are on this journey with me. So we're going to look at the first idea that was shared in workbook lesson 105. And it states, God's peace and God's joy are mine. God's peace and God's joy are mine. And so there is a peace and a joy that comes from God, that is a part of God's nature. And because it is a part of God's nature and we have been born of God, are born of love, it is a part of our nature. It's a part of our nature. It's a gift from our Creator. And so today we will accept God's peace and God's joy in glad exchange for all the substitutes, all the substitutes that we have made for happiness and peace. We have, in our natural inclinations, we have sought after peace and we have sought after joy in the world, in the creation. We have sought it in places, and we have sought it in things. We have sought it in relationships because we did not, at that point of not being aware at all of our life prior to being aware of our nature being the same as God, we sought these things. We sought after peace and joy, happiness, fulfillment, purpose. And we sought them in a place that they were not. And where we sought them was in a world that we made based on a idea of separation, fear, guilt, sin consciousness. And never will you find peace or joy or fulfillment in those places because that's not where God placed them. God placed these attributes. God placed these gifts. He placed these within us, and they were there all the time. And that is the good news, that we no longer have to go seeking, but to become aware of the reality that these are essential parts of our nature, part of what we are made of. Part of, and I don't like to use that word "made" when we're talking about reality, because reality is not made. Reality is created. Reality is an extension of the very Creator itself. So these attributes, these gifts, are essential part of our creation. It's an essential part of the very essence of who we are. Just like eternity is a part of our nature. Eternal, being what? Being the truth, being what? Being reality, being birthless and deathless. Being what? Being love. The mere fact that we are unalterable and we're these unchanging beings in our true state, being timeless and formless. All these are essential ingredients, essential parts of who we really are. If you never really knew, who am I? We're getting these questions answered in these workbook lessons in the Course in Miracles. Who am I? What am I? What is the nature of myself? We are learning these things in these exercises. And so when we looked over at workbook lesson 105, it says, God's peace and joy are ours. We accept them, knowing they belong to us. And we will try to understand these gifts, and that these gifts increase, or these attributes increase as we receive them. It says, they are not like the gifts the world can give, in which the giver loses as he gives the gifts. And the taker is the richer by his loss. Such are not gifts, but they are bargains. And so what we're learning here is that in true giving and in true receiving, there are no losers. And the giver, he's not depleted because he gives. Giving and receiving is one act of love. If we go back to one of the workbook lessons that we learned, giving and receiving is one act of love. And so as God has given us all things in the creation process, it did not leave God lacking in anything. It doesn't leave God lacking in anything. In true giving, it doesn't leave the giver lacking. And there is no loss to the giver. But what happens in true giving and receiving is that which is given increases, not only in the receiver, but it increases in the giver. That is the nature of life. That is the nature of our being. That is the nature of love. Love is only expansive. It is not contracting. And I know that is so contrary to our understanding, to what we know naturally, to what we've been taught from what we learn in the world. What we learn in the world is that one man's loss becomes another man's gain, but not so in reality. There is no loss in reality, and there's no gain for one and not for the other. In the process of true giving, the giver and the receiver are blessed, and the gift that is given is increased in both. That is a universal principle of the one law of love. And we have to learn that. We have to understand that, so that we don't fear in our natural desire to give, that we don't be fearful of coming up as losers. That's not a real gift. It says no gift is given thus. Such gifts are but a bid for a more valuable return. It's like a loan or with interest. It's temporary lending, a pledge. These are strange distortions of what giving means, and it pervades all level of the world that we see. It strips all meaning from the gifts that is given and leaves us nothing in the ones you take. So this is a real important concept that for us to learn as we look at this idea of giving and receiving. As we look at the the gifts that God has given unto us. Here we're talking about peace and joy. And these gifts only increase. They only multiply in the presence of the giver and the receiver. There is no loss. The ego thought system would have us to believe that to give is for you to not possess it anymore. And that is not true. You can only give what you are. You can only give of your own nature. And so God has given his creation everything. And in the process of doing so, God is not being depleted at all. In fact, it tells us here that God gets so much, or love gets so much thrill out of us receiving the gifts. Why? Because it is of the nature of the giver. It's of the nature of the giver that the receiver be overly blessed, overly increased by that which is given. And say, so today, accept God's peace and joy as ours. Let love complete himself, and as he defines completion, we will understand that what completes God must complete his son as well. He cannot give through loss. Okay? God doesn't give through loss. That means that what you and I extend and offer to others, we don't extend it through loss. So we easily offer our love, our joy, our peace, our happiness, our skills, our abilities. We easily offer it because it's not offered through loss. It says, no more can we offer gifts through loss. It says, receive his gift of joy and peace today, and he will thank you for your gift to him. There's a scripture that says, as much as we give or as much as we do to another, we do it to God, or we do it to love. Why? Because love is all one. We're giving to ourselves. We are increasing ourselves in our giving. When we give from reality perspective, we're increasing ourselves as the giver, not only increasing the receiver, because we understand that the receiver and the giver are one and the same. But we give to ourselves. So why wouldn't you give yourself joy? Why wouldn't you give yourself the gift of peace? That's what we desire. And as we discover that it's already intrinsic within us, we give it to ourselves by giving it to others. We give it to ourselves by giving it to others. That's the lesson for today. So my brother, peace and joy is offered to us, that we may have God's peace and joy for ourselves. So we offer this peace and joy to everyone we see today. How do we offer it to them? We give them our full, innocent self as evident of their own innocence. We bring tidings of peace. We bring tidings of joy to every conversation, to every encounter today. We bless those that stand before us. We see them for who they are. We look past their own misunderstandings, and we see the light that is within them. We know what their true nature is. And so we allow that which is divine in us to acknowledge that divine that is in them. That's what namaste means. The divine in me honors the divine in you. And so as we do that, we are offering the gift of peace and joy. Try it out today. Offer it to yourself, or accept it for yourself, because they're already yours. And so that was workbook lesson 105. God's peace and joy are mine. And then in workbook lesson 106, it says, let me be still and listen to the truth. Wow. Let's think about that. Let's think about that. Let me be still and listen to the truth. So that tells me that truth is heard in stillness. That truth is heard in stillness. It says, let my own feeble voice be still. And let me hear the mighty voice of truth. It comes through allowing our own still voice, our own feeble voice to be still. Meaning that in quietness, we hear the voice of truth. We hear that voice of truth in quietness. It says, let us be still. Let our own feeble voice be still, and let us hear the mighty voice of truth itself. Assure us that we are God's perfect creation. And so when we looked at workbook lesson 106, it opened up by saying, if we will lay aside the ego's voice. So that means we have to lay it aside. And remember, we said the ego always speak first and always speak loud. That is an indication to you that it is not the voice of truth. It says that the ego voice speak what? It speaks first and it speaks loud. It says, however loudly it may seem to call us or to speak to us, if we will not accept its petty gifts, a substitute, for peace and joy. It says, if we would not accept its petty gifts that gives us nothing that we really want, if we will listen with an open mind that has not told us what salvation is, then we will hear the mighty voice of truth, quiet in power. Notice now, it's quiet in power. So that's power and quietness. How much quiet time do we spend in 24 hours? Let's think about that. It says it is strong in stillness. The voice of truth is quiet in power, strong in stillness, and completely certain in its message. So the voice that speaks for truth speaks with certainty. It speaks with confidence. And it speaks with assurance. And so today, the review of workbook lesson 106, we are being invited to be still and listen to the truth. It says, go past all things which do not speak of reality. All things that do not speak of our reality, of our truth. It says, go past that. All things that would hold our happiness at bay. All things that will cover up our happiness. It says, hear one voice today. Hear and be silent. He would speak to you. He comes with miracles 1,000 times as happy and as wonderful as those you ever dreamt and wished for in your dreams. His miracles are true. They will not fade with dreaming ends. They end the dream instead and last forever, for they come from God to his dear son or his dear creation, whose other name is you. Prepare yourself for miracles today. Today, allow your Father's ancient pledge to you and all your brothers to be kept. And so today's idea is that we're going to practice today in our practice periods, being still, allowing the mind to quiet itself as we be still and listen to the truth. The voice that speaks for God is always sharing with us, is always bringing us messages of truth. If we would but what? Be still and listen. It says, be still and listen to the truth today. For each 5 minutes spent in listening, 1,000 minds are opened to the truth, and they will hear the holy word that you hear. Can you see how tremendous this idea of silent listening, what that opens up in all humanity? That by doing so, it says, by us doing so, 1,000 minds will open to the truth, and they will hear the holy word you hear. And when the hour is past, you will again release 1,000 more who pause to ask that truth be given them along with you. By our just act of listening, we open the door for others to listen. Not to the ego's raucous squeaking, not to the ego's messages of fear, guilt, and sin, but we hear the words of salvation being spoken in us, not to us, spoken from within us. We hear the promise, we hear the guarantee, we have the assurance, we gain certainty by listening to this voice. And it's not just for us, but we engage and open a space for thousands and upon thousands to hear the voice also. It says, today the holy word of God is kept through our receiving it to give away, so you can teach the world what giving means by listening and learning it from our Creator. Do not forget today to reinforce our choice to hear and to receive the word by this reminder. Give to yourself as often as it is possible today. So let me be still and listen to the truth. I am the messenger of God today. My voice is His to give what I have received. Wow. So those are the two workbook lessons that we are reviewing today, 105, 106. So during your day, during your quiet time, during your each hour, remember these two ideas. That God's peace and joy are ours. These are gifts from God. And these gifts increase as we receive them, not only to the receiver, but to the giver. And let us be still and listen to the truth. Let our own feeble voice be still, and let me hear the mighty voice for truth itself. Assure us that we are God's perfect creation. You and I and all humanity, we are God's perfect creation. And perfection is not something that is defined by this body identification, but is defined by our Creator. And what we received in the creation process is perfect, is whole and complete. There's nothing missing and nothing broken in our life, in reality. We are indeed the holiness of God. We are indeed the inheritance, the offspring. We are indeed what God is. And today we embrace that, and we embrace and we accept all the gifts that God has for us. And we give those gifts just as we have received, fully have we received, fully we give to others. So as you go through your day, these are the ideas that we will practice in every opportunity we get today. So thank you so much for being with me today. Again, these workbook lessons are being sponsored by Truly Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated and devoted to sharing advanced spirituality, allowing that which is true to become our experience, that which is real to be our experience. And so we thank you for being here, and be back on tomorrow. And until then, I say joy and peace to you in all you do. Bye-bye.